Welcome to Grace Notes, the weekly community affairs show with Town of Yorktown Supervisor Michael Grace. And I'm your host, Bruce Apar of Chase Media Group. And we always just start off the show with a couple of upcoming events. And there really isn't all that much, which you're probably happy about.
Right, well,
you can use a little bit of a rest. But there, I know town offices are closed Martin Luther King Day, right? January 21.
Oh, good. I have a day off. I didn't even know
That's
about.
Right, you don't even know. And then we also want to mention the Chamber of Commerce on Sunday, January 27, has their annual Home Expo, which is always a popular event.
Right, it's a Club Fit,
At Club Fit, yeah, at Club Fit in Jefferson Valley. And so you really want to check that out because over the past few years, the Chamber has really built up the Home Expo, and it's really worth going and just seeing all the local businesses there and putting their wares on display, and maybe there's a few things you want to buy and leave with. So we always recommend the Home Expo that the Chamber is sponsoring too.
And there's a network meeting for the Chamber, right, on Monday.
January 14th at Marshall Alarms.
Yeah.
Right. Right here at the Roma. Is it the Roma?
Is it Roma or is it on front?
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking the Roma Building's on my mind because that's worth mentioning too. That
Absolutely, yeah.
It looks like from the rendering a stunning makeover they're going to have for the Roma Building.
Well, we certainly hope.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because it's a showpiece. Yeah, it should be a showpiece. It's right in the middle of the Heights.
Yeah. The bar's set low for the owner, but I hate to say that, but it is.
Yeah,
it is. It's apropos to that. I mean, it was one of the things that we've been trying to accomplish. I think to a certain degree we have accomplished over the last years to create an atmosphere in town that makes business owners incentivized to redevelop their properties. It's kind of interesting with commercial properties. Most people are very familiar with obviously their personal real property, residences, and we would never think of buying and building a house and taking it down in 20 years and redoing the whole thing.
Right.
A lot of homes are 100 years old. It can be 100 years old, 50 years old. And but commercial properties, they really are designed and built to be fully depreciated within a certain amount of time. And just because the investment and the structure of the investment and everything else is to be essentially they have a short shelf life, a much shorter shelf life than residential property. So you always want to look at them to be rejuvenated.
Right. Yes.
So there's a lot of buildings in town that are on the list to kind of be upgraded. So we're very happy that the owner over there is taking a look at, towards rejuvenating that building.
Right. And then you have I know some residents brought it up to you, and I know you responded in the media about the business location on Main Street in Shrub Oak, right? That people feel is an eyesore. Was it the auto?
The old auto care.
They're sort of entreating you to do something or to help do something about that.
Right. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, hopefully the owner of the A&P in Shrub Oak took notice last night. We passed new legislation, and significant. What I would characterize the really low-hanging fruit in terms of regulatory reform that would get things moving again in a positive direction as to the revitalization of the commercial tax base in the town of Yorktown. And that was to reduce the required parking from 5,000 spaces. I mean, five spaces per 1,000 square foot to 4,000 spaces per.
To four spaces.
Yeah.
Right.
It's been a long day, I guess. from 5 to 4 spaces per 1,000 square foot of gross building area. And what it does, interestingly enough, the Shrub Oak A&P parking lot, if, for example, that building that is now boarded up and broken glass or whatever, is an outbuilding that is a fairly small footprint of 25 by 30 or something along those lines.
Right.
But when the parking requirements get reduced from 5 to 4 per 1,000 square feet of building, all of a sudden you have the ability to not just redo that building, but knock it down, which is really, it's fully depreciated. It's just a cinder block building. It's cheap construction on a slab. Knock it down. And you're able now to put a little bit extra more building up on the same parking area.
Right.
So you have the ability to actually improve the property
yeah.
significantly,
Right.
and or at least have the owner say, well, look, I'm not stuck to this footprint or the square footage. I have a little bit more wiggle room, so maybe I can if I get a little more square footage, I can do something more innovative or creative with the
Oh,
property.
no, that is interesting. And I'm assuming, maybe like me, most people don't think of it that way, but it's like a development stimulus, really. Right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's
Right.
a you know when I talk about low hanging fruit,
Right,
it's a very low hanging piece of fruit to
Right.
get that to stimulate reinvestment.
Right.
It becomes the same thing with the Roma Building. You know, to the degree he needs to if it's a facade renovation, but let's say he just needs to get punched out. He needs to get in a couple of square foot, or he needs a return over here to get, so he needs a little extra up on top or whatever it is. He's not going to have to go out and try to create the parking spaces to allow for that.
Right.
With the reduction in the parking requirements, it's already built into the site.
Right.
So the idea here was that there isn't any all the national standards for commercial development, retail, and office. The trend has been for decades to be at 4 spaces per 1,000 square feet,
Right.
and especially when there's more than a single user in a building, because you have certain economies associated with it. Not everybody shows up at the same time and leaves at the same time. This type of thing. So one of the easiest things that you can excuse me, I had a cold there. Yeah. One of the easiest things that you can do to stimulate everybody taking a hard look at these properties that are at the low end of income producing commercial properties, that you can actually go in there and say, wait a second, I can take it down, I can create an extra square footage, it gets an incentive, I don't have to create more parking, and I can redevelop these pieces of property. So, last night,
The board meeting, yeah.
the board meeting, we passed that legislation, and it wasn't insignificant. It's funny. I think I joke with people as to what gets play out there in the public arena. The papers and I guess some of the online media seem to have a little bit of get their undies in a bundle over the fact that we had a kind of an emergency meeting at the end of the year in order to ratify contracts with a new insurance carrier. And basically, our old carrier decided that they wouldn't re-up with us based upon our loss experience. And it's not necessarily the lawsuit, how much it settles for, how much it's worth. It's just the fact that we've got these claims.
Right.
I analogize it to a speeding ticket. You got your speeding ticket, and why the insurance company, either drops you or raises your premium is because, it wasn't the only time that you were probably speeding. It's just, you got, in between doing it all the time, you got caught once. So it becomes the same type of thing. The claims experience is what they go on, not on how much the claim is worth.
Right.
So basically, on the claims experience over the last couple of years, they really had any interest in re-upping with the town of Yorktown. So we really had to shop around and beg and plead and we got Travelers, which is a very good company,
Right.
and a very good coverage. It's a little bit more expensive, but it's better coverage because it doesn't have the high deductibles that we had last time.
Right.
So the premium is a little bit higher, but the deductibles are a lot lower.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the kind of policy that you want should you have lots of claims.
Right.
Whereas the prior policy was a policy we didn't want because it was not only paying the premium but paying the deductibles, which were $50,000, $75,000. So it was significant. It wasn't just they say compare apples to oranges. The premium from last year, with the deductibles and the self-insured retentions that we had to pay was a lot more expensive than what we paid this year.
Right.
So anyhow, but it seems that got that type of thing, calling it a meeting because our contract's going to expire on the 31st, and we really should have in place the authorization for my signature on the new policy before the 31st, which is essentially at the end of the year. You always find you've got some loose ends that you have to tie up. Probably and some of them don't, for whatever reason, get tied up at the last possible meeting of the town board, which is usually the budget adoption meeting.
Right.
So, it probably behooves us, maybe we'll do it next year. It's just to schedule a meeting at the end of the last week of the year just to do this on a so any loose ends can be tied up without getting this big hoopla over. Did
They
you
didn't
call
know
the
about
meeting?
the meeting, right.
But that gets play when, on the other hand, which to me is kind of pedantic nonsense, where what the media doesn't pick up or can't even be bothered with, it doesn't even understand, is that we actually passed very significant regulatory reform last night, which will really incentivize the redevelopment of the commercial tax base in the town, for which we want to have coverage and which we want to get the word out. We would hope that the news organizations would pick it up, because it is significant, and it signifies a change in direction for the town. And also to make these property owners aware that there is the property is, you can come in with more creative, innovative designs,
Right.
and to redevelop your property, because so it would be nice if that started that was a headline banner,
Right.
rather than.
So in other words,
some of
it's
this
talking,
other-
and by the way, you're saying all this to a media guy,
Yeah.
but no, I understand perfectly what you're saying, which basically I would sum up as there's too much focus on process and not on results and on the substantive issues. That actually affect, in a positive way, the quality of life in the town.
Right. If there should have been any focus by the media or the public, it should have been on what are you doing to our land regs, not whether what you held a meeting because you had to ratify an insurance policy before the end of the year.
Right.
So it's kind of funny, but I guess the thing is if you're really concerned in the direction the town's taking, those the focus should be more on what we're doing,
right,
in terms of the regulatory infrastructure, and not whether or not we're tying up a loose end at the end of the year, because of the already preset meeting schedule didn't allow for us to get the business in. Based upon the meetings that were set up on the organizational meeting in January 1 of 2012.
Right.
So.
But also, Supervisor, talking about parking, one of the things that occurs to me, and I know watching the board meeting on Tuesday night, January 9th, some comments were made about that when you drive around town, there are a lot of larger parking lots where you do see a lot of empty spaces.
Yeah.
And I know Ray Arnold, who I know and I love Ray, he's a great guy in a lot of ways. He had some slight differences of opinion about that. But one place, the destination building or structure that stands out in my mind is the community center, where there is a severe shortage of parking, and there are a lot of events that take place there. I mean, of course, you have Yorktown Stage and all the shows, and then all the events at the community center, in the main building itself. And of course, that building is how old? It must be 100 years.
The old sixth grade school, right?
So what I'm thinking, I know you like to talk a lot about the Heights and how you would like to make it more of a village green ambience, and then of course the highway garage, moving that. But I know from listening to you and talking with you about it, you don't necessarily have in mind for the highway garage location parking, right? But I mean, could there be more parking in town?
Yeah, well, what you'll have, I mean, the sixth grade school, I mean, there's a lot of events there. And what does happen is most people, I think a lot of people are cognizant of the fact that the best place to park for events at the DeVito Field,
the A&P
parking lot, which there's a set of stairs that goes back and forth there. But there are things that we can do. We don't have a lot of on-street parking, or a lot of. I mean, there actually is on-street parking.
Well, veterans, people park on veterans,
but they don't. People are unaware of it because they just assume, well, park there, because nobody seems to be parking there. So if you have one car, and so. There are all sorts of methods to achieve it. It can be rather than doing parking parallel to the curb, you do 7-degree parking. You do all sorts of things. So angled parking, and so there are ways of addressing it. And the thing is that it's kind of funny, the day that there's an administration in town that's being hammered by complaints. that the town is, the Heights area is so active that they can't find parking spaces would be a really
good
good
day.
day. So, the point being is that, that hasn't been the case. I mean, we have big open lots.
Right.
Maybe not where we probably would like them. I mean,
Right, that's what it is.
in a sense, but
Not immediately adjacent to the.
so
to
you
the
have,
building.
you
Right.
have a food emporium lot, which, well, food emporium's out of business at this point, but that's empty all the time. You have the A&P lot, which is semi-full. That's kind of, so, what happens, everybody wants to see, a lot of, we say, well, what are you doing about the old stores? Well, this is one of the things that we are doing about the old stores. I mean, you've got to create a certain critical mass where Yorktown Heights is a destination spot. They say, well, wait a second. It's got a charm, it's got a vibrancy, and so that people want to bring their businesses, and you're not going to have any problem. You're not going to have any problem with vacancies after a while. And matter of fact, most businesses find what they look at is they look at their demographic studies. There are actually companies that would that are familiar with it that would go out, and what they do is they go out and look for sites for a national chain
Right. Yes.
retailers.
Site selection.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Site
And
selection.
what they do is study demographics. They
Yes,
study the demographics. They study the disposable income within a certain radius of certain areas. And Heights area has got great demographics for retailers. It really does. And everybody knows. I mean, what's the complaint in Yorktown? There's no place to shop. Everybody leaves Yorktown to go shopping, and it just tells you that the demographics are that Yorktown has a big disposable income that isn't being spent in Yorktown. It's always going out of Yorktown.
Right.
So the thing is to try to do things to keep it in Yorktown, and environmentally a positive thing too, because it's just not driving. It's not, you're staying local and you're shopping local.
Right.
But you have to want to create that critical mass. So you have to want to create the quality of retail, shopping, restaurants that makes it Yorktown Heights a destination spot rather than a kind of a trip over spot.
Right. Right.
So
just passing through.
Right. So there are things that we can do, and without affecting the character of the town, actually improving the character of the town. Because when you get this reinvestment and redevelopment of the commercial tax base, it's not as if you're going out to virgin land and building on it. What you're doing is you're taking a look at what's the interior Heights commercial properties and getting them to revamp themselves. It's one of the reasons why we're taking a serious. I'm going to push very hard to relocate the highway garage.
Right. And so what's your vision for what would supplant the garage where it is now on Front Street?
Well, I think I think you could go with some type. You could go with a mixed use, which would be residential and commercial and retail below. You could do office retail. I think what I would like to see is I would like to see a building that's probably, if not 2 or 3 stories, and with under the first floor being a retail shops or restaurants. That would take advantage of the county trailway that's in front of it, which also would augment the Railroad Park, which also would also try to look to enhance that as well. If you put office or residential up above or mix, you can do that. The Yorktown Commons area is office below and residential above. So wouldn't we be inconsistent with that to do retail below and office above, or retail below and housing above? Because the other one has office below and housing above. So the mixed use can work well. So.
And you said there's already interest, possibly.
There's lots, yeah. We floated this idea last year, and I'll be meeting with somebody this month that's got some interest in it.
Right.
My feeling is that for what we could get for the property, with pre-approvals on it, would be significantly more than it would cost us to take down and relocate the highway garage. Right. So it would be a positive cash flow to the town.
Right.
And on top of that, then you put that property back on the tax rolls permanently, which is also then, so now it's an income-producing piece of property for the town. And it will also, I think, you spur again, a redevelopment of this little bit of downtown area. It'll start creating a downtown area that includes town hall within it. The town hall seems to be at the,
Right.
it's at the tail end of the downtown area. It's
Yeah,
at the periphery.
right.
Now it will be included within it. So, and there's some environmental projects that we would do along with it. Stormwater treatment and control.
Right.
Which are things that need to be done, but we would work them into the plan so they would be done as well. So I think you'd have a net environmental gain, you'd have an economic gain, and a net aesthetic gain, and I think it'll all be very good for the town.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But one of the things, even for making that viable, is this low-hanging fruit that we picked last night, which is going from if you require 5 spaces per 1,000, you're going to get just a parking lot, not a building. So. And there are other considerations that the planning board can use, so they can actually be anywhere between 3 to 5 per 1,000, which makes a lot of sense for a building over there, which has the big commuter lot next door.
Right.
So the things that we're doing, this is the stuff that I think should be in play out there,
Right.
because this is the stuff that changes and moves the town forward.
Oh, yeah.
So if we can get people to start focusing on this stuff, it'll be good for the town. I mean, last night's meeting was good. We had a lot of what was the Green Yorktown, Yorktown
right.
Green. They were very supportive of it. Jonathan Nettlefield, who was on our show early in January,
one of the first shows,
and it was one of the discussions I had with him. We talked about doing
that's
it,
right.
and so finally we got it done. And I'm looking forward to. Again, this year, I think last year was filled with a lot of distractions of tying some up loose ends. You had the DPW, you had the Sporting Club, you had the winery. Right. I mean, if you go down the list, someone says, "Oh, you got to think about what you did last year." And I'm thinking, "Oh God, I forgot about half of it." But I mean, you started off with what did we do? We the winery, which is something that was a no-brainer to approve. Finally got its approvals.
Right.
And to allow that to open, which is a project which was a renovation again, a revitalization of a dilapidated building into a viable,
beautiful. Yeah.
So you start, we talk to them all. We've been talking to them all year long. Last night was passing the legislation that they needed in order to go out and start to sell their space to possible new tenants.
Right.
And it's kind of interesting. Everybody's saying, well, the regulations were very nebulous as to what applied to the mall. Old regulations where you had to have a certain square feet of parking and landscaping per 1 square foot of net leasable space, or gross leasable area within the mall. Right. And what that, I think it was two to 1, and what that 2 square feet to that 1 foot of leasable area could consist of was up to the planning. Right. So it meant you could have 1 space at all, to be, for purpose of illustration, the extreme. The problem with that is that, one of the criticisms was, well, why does the mall want to have a set number of parking spaces when they can really pick and choose what they want? Well, the problem is it doesn't help or guide the approval authority, which is the planning department, in terms of how to set things out. It doesn't give them a guideline. Right. And number one. Number two, more importantly, and this is kind of the behind-the-scenes thing that people have to realize, is that the more rent space, that just, the tenants in there.
Tenants, yes.
They have, it's not everybody in the mall isn't the same company. It's individual little shops. They have to go back out and attract tenants to come in. Right. Tenants want to know, what is the available parking? What is it? They want to know what that ratio is before they sign on the lease. That's what they want to know. They want to know. Well, we're redeveloping at 2 square, parking and landscaping for 1 square of leasable area, but we haven't figured out what it's going to be yet. You're going to lose all your. You're going to lose your lease. Right. So it's important for them in terms of marketing the space, in terms of us looking at what's a reasonable development.
So is it? Is it possible that the footprint of the mall would get bigger? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, the bottom line with this stuff is that you can't. corporations, retailers are no different than the individual.
Right.
If I want you to, make a major investment in your home, or incentivize you to do something, it would be nice if I gave you some, actual financial incentive, whether it's a tax break for putting in, energy saving equipment or
Yes,
green
right.
equipment, or you create a, accessory apartment because, make some stock of affordable housing available. So through regulation or whatever, you provide some incentive for somebody to act.
Right.
You have to bring, it can't, a whip doesn't work.
Right.
You have to have a carrot on a stick.
Right.
And so it was important legislation because we can't put a gun to Simon Equity's head to say, come on in and do it. All we can do is say, look, we'll do everything we can to make it worth your while to come into this town and reinvest in it.
Right.
And when you're talking about a company that sits there, and it's a very big company with a lot of malls all over the world.
All over the country, world, right.
And they were one of the first mall developers, but they had the first generation of malls.
Yeah.
Jefferson Valley Mall is 560,000 square feet or something like that. And back when it was built in the 70s, would be considered a
big, very big, right?
Now
right.
it's considered a corner grocery store, and in relationship to real, Palisades, Carousel up in Syracuse.
Right.
These are mega malls.
Yes, right.
And so, they're
and they also own Simon Property owns the Westchester too.
Right.
Yeah.
These are large scale.
Yeah.
And so they look at these. These properties were designed back in the 70s. They probably had a designed useful life of the 25, 30 years, which is what it's come to.
Yep.
And they've got to make a decision. Do we reinvest in it, or do we start to
walk away? Yeah. Right.
So what you don't want them to be walking away.
Right.
You really want them to make that reinvestment. And so how do you do it? How do you get them to do it? You cajole them, you beg them? No, you provide the incentives to do it. You provide what it is that the regulatory infrastructure for them to do it.
Right.
It would be a blessing to see that, everything revitalized over the landscaping, the parking lot, the building, everything needs to be redone. And it's still a good place. It's like I said, the demographics in Yorktown are great for this stuff. And which is really remarkable to me is that the demographics in Yorktown didn't change overnight. Those demographics have been here for a while. Right. The thing is that Yorktown has never been proactive in terms of trying to incentivize redevelopment of its commercial tax base. And as a result, it's deteriorated. So you have to find ways of doing it. Right. And I think this past year we've done that.
Absolutely.
We've done that in a great way.
And also there's a restaurant, that restaurant space right inside the entrance of the JV Mall that's been vacant for, 15 years? It goes back. And they've had a sign up there that says opening in the fall. Now we're about 20 days into winter. Do you know what the status is?
I don't know. The big problem with that was they needed an exterior door at one time, and the site plan said no. It became all sorts of things, and this is the problem. You can't. And to say no for no sake, which is really what it is all the time. Sometimes, right? I mean, if you have the idea is if you have if there is an objection, a rational, reasonable objection to something, lay it out. At least everybody can figure out what it is and whether it can be resolved or not resolved. To just say no doesn't make any sense to me. I think I think the mall's problem is just that. Look, it's aesthetically, think about your own business. If I'm I'm going to open up my shop, which is a 5,000 square foot shop, where do I want to be? Do I want to be in the Jefferson Valley Mall? Do I want to be in the Heights area? Do I want to be in the Town Center? Where do I want to be? Where you are is going to determine how much rent you're going to pay, but you're also going to sit there and look. Well, wait a second. I mean, I got to pay for premium locations. I'm going to pay premium rents, and you go through this whole thing, but. At the end of the day, you want to be where business is. You want to be where it's aesthetically attractive. I always say, you can have, the same burger in two different restaurants. If you have it in roach-infested, dingy, old,
right.
shackle-down restaurant, and it's going to taste like
Right.
what the place looks like.
Right.
If I put you in the middle of a, Trump golf course ballroom, and you have that burger, you're going to sit there and I'd find China and say, "Well, now it's a burger."
You're
So
right.
a lot of what a lot of your spending is based upon the aesthetics, and that's why shops do dress themselves up, do this.
Right.
So and it's the same thing with So you have to being conscious of the aesthetics is very important.
Yeah.
So Roma Building is a good example. I think it's a very wise investment because the aesthetics of that building is such. You look in there, you walk in there, you think,
Right.
right. If this, but we've got to begin to incentivize this stuff.
Right.
And you can't, the Costco was another, years ago, I guess somebody wanted to come in and put like what do they call it? Wholesale outlet stores in there, like a village type.
Yes. Like Woodbury.
Yeah, I think, and it fell flat. Well, it was because the town didn't act well enough or quick enough or aggressively enough in order to do it. Some people that are anti-Costco says, "Oh, we wish we would have had that," or "Can't we go out and get this?" And the bottom line is you can't go. The town can't go out and we can try to recruit some things in,
right?
But in a lot of ways you have to be willing to accept who's willing to invest.
Well, exactly. That's right.
And the thing is that
it's like you were saying before, with these large retailers, site selection is a very exact science. They know where they want to be.
Absolutely.
It doesn't matter how many times a town comes to them and say, "We want you to be here." If it's not worth it to them, they're not going to be there.
Right. And opposite, the opposite is true. I mean, always says, "Well, BJ's is going to," look. I mean, the demographics for Yorktown is such that there isn't any. BJ's isn't a threat to Costco, and Costco isn't a threat to BJ's, especially if you turn around and look and you say you got 1.5 million square feet down in the Cortland Town Center.
Right.
The 1.5 million square feet in the down in Cortland Town Center is much more competition than $150,000.
But that's also
square foot building.
But that's also the way I know from years of covering the retail business. That's how these retailers do site selection. I'm sure a big reason Costco wants to be there is because BJ's is there. Burger King wants to be where McDonald's is.
Right. And I'm going to tell you, it's really funny. I mean, we all like to think of ourselves as very unique. Right. But unfortunately, we all kind of fall into certain really predictable trends. Right. All of us, no matter how unique we think we are. Most people will only want to travel a certain distance from their home to do something. Most people, I mean, it's really funny when you start doing these behavioral studies and you look at them, they know.
Yes.
They know exactly,
right.
You get into this radius with this type of population, with this type of demographics, with this type of disposable income, you're going to do well. You're not going to, and so, and again, you're talking about somebody that's looking to invest tens of millions of dollars into the town. They're not doing it to lose.
No, that's for sure.
These developers are probably the most risk-adverse people in the world.
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so they really have I'm going to it's not everybody says you got to buy the risk taker. The guy that's really successful has never taken a risk in his life. I mean, they've been so well calculated. That there really isn't any risk, although from the outside it may look, oh, gee, that's a big risk. No, it's very well calculated. The guys that do fail are the ones that don't do the calculation beforehand. Right. I think we've had I'm very glad that the board last night decided to move on that legislation. It was a little bit of a contentious meeting in December. But that may have been a little bit of my lack of patience on it. I thought it was a no-brainer. It ended up being a no-brainer for everybody last night. I think everybody was happy to have voted for it and passed it. So we look forward to now seeing what fruits it brings. At the meeting, Jonathan Nettlefield did show up, and I hopefully we'll get him back on and hopefully talk to him again because I think he's got some other ideas, which I would like to also take a look at, because I think this is where we need to go. We need to try to create the regulatory environment so that people will make the investment in the town that we want, that we're looking to get.
Right.
So
and Jonathan is a very good representative and spokesman spokesperson, for that particular perspective, which is, as you've said, and you said it on the show, you share with them. Smart.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know what? I think we constantly, unfortunately, the Costco thing always gets into the mindset. It's like, oh, Costco. Right. And it's sort of like, the sky. It's the Chicken Little thing. The sky's not falling. Costco's 150,000 square feet. It's equivalent to one store in the Cortland Town Center.
Right.
Albeit maybe a bigger one, but it's relatively small. I mean, the Super A&P is almost as big, if not bigger.
Right. Right.
You're talking about one building that's slated to go on a site that has a dilapidated old hotel on it.
Right.
That's not producing any revenue for anybody anywhere.
Yeah.
You're having a guy wanting to make tens of millions of dollars of investment in the town. I think Costco hopes that the dire predictions of all its anti-Costco people is true, that it's going to generate X amount of trips and the place is going to be packed all day long.
Right.
I mean, they'd love to have that, but they understand that that's not reality either, and it's not reality. It's like if you go to any place, you go to Cortland Town Center, go to Baldwin Place, go to the mall, go to go to any of these places. These big regional shopping centers.
Yeah.
Almost 350 days of the year, and you will see a blacktop in front of you.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. They don't. They
don't pack them in every day.
No. And they don't. And there's a few days a year that they may have to, or they do.
Right.
But it's not, and not every. When somebody comes into town, it doesn't suck the life out of. It isn't the big black hole that sucks the economic life out of everybody else in town. Actually, sometimes that's the exact opposite.
Right.
People complain, "What are you going to get the?" It's kind of funny with Costco. They say, "Well, I got a lot of empty stores. Why are we looking at 150,000 square feet of Costco? Look at all the empty stores on 202." You're right. You probably, and then the next argument, because if you put that Costco in, you got to study the fact that the impact of probably of Costco going to have there, that all those stores on the road south side of 202 are going to be redeveloped and become viable again.
Right.
Now you should include the traffic of them as if they were all viable again. Well, what is it? Is it Costco going to suck the life out of the local economy, or is it going to spur?
Fuse it, yeah.
Right.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
It's
But the same thing on that same note, which is a very good point with what we've been talking about with the Roma Building, which we should point out, it's basically a cosmetic makeover of the skin, right? I'm pretty sure, because I spoke to the architect at a chamber meeting, doesn't involve the guts of the building as much as the skin of the building. But you have to think that's going to have a nice halo effect on things around it in town. So,
and the thing is, I'm hoping that the owner and architect, paid attention last night.
Right.
I mean, this is the whole point of getting what we did last night out, the news out, because you know what, you may not, if you're going to make that kind of substantial investment in, maybe you can consider a little bit of an expansion within the parking that you do have to really, it's always it's a question of properties, commercial property owners don't have an endless deep pocket.
Right.
They still have to get a return on their money.
Yeah, that's right.
So that it would be nice to sit there and say, "Oh, can you build the Taj Mahal for me?" But the bottom line is that you got to give them some return. So if it turns out that they say, look, I can get a little more square footage, I can do a little bit of this, I can create. That's good. That's good.
Right.
That you have to give something in return. It's constantly start. Every time, to have this attitude, it's us against them, it's us against them, us against them.
Right.
Doesn't produce anything. This is what you've got is what we've had over the last 20 years, which has been a stagnating commercial base within the town of Yorktown.
Right.
Other towns haven't suffered from this. We have.
Yeah.
And because there may be if your goal is not to allow anything and to keep everything stagnant, well then fine. Just we can accomplish that regulatory by making regulatory reform too. We can do that really
putting
easy.
up obstacles. Yeah.
So and the thing is, it's just a matter of being honest about it. What direction do you want to see the town going? It's not to pave it over. It's not to make it. It's to be an absolutely charming place. But there are pockets of eyesores in town. Let's face it.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So to the degree that we can put new life into it, we should. And I would love to have that be the discussion and what we are doing about that, and not whether or not, if somebody's got their nose bent out of shape because they didn't get notice for their purposes to show up at the last meeting of the year where we're tying up loose ends. Right. But
now, just as we're wrapping it up, Supervisor, on the same theme, a lot of people do ask, I'm sure you get it all the time, and I hear it myself, just people wondering out loud about Food Emporium, because that's been vacant. I lost track. Is it 2 years? I don't know. But I guess the question here might be, does the town have any sway over that, or it's just whatever A&P owns the space, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's when a company goes into bankruptcy, you have a trustee that
marshals. And A&P is in Chapter 11. Right.
So what they do, they marshal all the assets, and you have all the creditors come in, and you make up. If you're not in a liquidation, you make up a payment plan. You
a reorganization
plan. Right. But you have to go back out. And what is very valuable, which is a very valuable corporate asset, is their lease space.
Real estate, yeah, right.
They don't. A&P doesn't own the real estate, but they have the lease.
Right.
So the lease, I don't know, but the lease maybe. I think that last time at one time when the A&P when it was the old A&P and then was rebuilt as a Food Emporium. At that point in time, I know A&P's had a $3 a square foot lease on that space,
right,
which was about $30 on the market. So it became a huge asset.
Right.
The problem is that the owner of the shopping center wasn't viable for him to rebuild. Take down the old A&P, build the Food Emporium, having to hand over the leasehold at $3 a square foot. It's almost easier for him to just abandon the whole center, which they can do because they say, look, if I got to spend, the A&P had the gun to his head because it was structural failure of the building, so the A&P sues him because you've interfered with my tenancy. You've got the obligation of structural failure to redo the building. And the guy says, well, at $3, and then I'm going to have to redo it, give it back to you at $3 a square foot. You know what? Easy, just, yeah. So what happens is you go, they ended up renegotiating it. And, to where the developer did build a new building on Oster Realty's properties, built a new building. And I think they went from $3 a square foot to $33 a square foot. Where A&P had, and A&P was...
So that's why they vacated it.
Well, at $33 a square foot, $33 a square foot is still a very reasonable rent for that space in that location.
Right.
So the bottom line is that the lease is not going to becomes an asset to the bankruptcy estate. So the bankruptcy trustee is not going to release that lease from the bankruptcy estate because if they can sublet it, they can maybe get $40 a square foot. So they don't want to, there's a potential profit of $7 a square foot on that thing, which one way or the other, maybe, or $10 a square foot, whatever it is, or $50 a square foot. So you got to get into the, once they've finished marshaling all their assets and decided how to divvy up everything to their creditors and payment plans and reorganization and everything else, and maybe if they go into liquidation, that becomes a different thing. But maybe when they do it, you finally get this thing gets released out of that.
So you think it's when they come out of Chapter 11 that something could happen to the building?
Yeah. Because until that time, you have, it's not up to the property owner. It's not up to A&P. It's up to you got the court over the court trustees overlooking the
protection of the court.
Yeah. So it's not that easy. The thing is that I think if we do, what I envision here in the Heights area. What will happen is that will become a very, very desirable location.
I mean, it is now.
Yeah,
but a lot of people eye that location. Yeah.
So at that point, that's really what ended up forcing it back onto the market. That's what has to be understood. You can't you can't be myopic about these things. You can't be looking at it by site. You have to really look at it at a much grander scale.
Yeah.
And if you can get things moving, if you can create the atmosphere, it's like the field of dreams. Build it, they will come. Start to have the vision, implement the vision, and don't worry about it. It will all come together.
Right.
If you don't have that, then it's helter-skelter.
Right.
It's, people come, people go, they put the water put their toe in the water and then leave, and, so what you really want to do is you want to say, hey, I want to be in this town. You want, retailers, office users, income-producing businesses to say, I want to be in Yorktown. I don't want to be anywhere else. I want to be in Yorktown. I don't want to be in Cortland. I don't want to be in Somers. I don't want to be in Putnam County. I don't want to be in Ossining. I want to be in Yorktown because, and once you can build that kind of atmosphere, you're going to create. You have the then now you start to have the ability to really recreate and get public amenities as well. Because anybody, they'll furnish public amenities just to get into town.
You mean private businesses you're talking about?
Yeah. Just like Costco will put in a couple of lanes of roadway, 202. You'll start to incent, and that's how you have to get, and that's where, to me, one of the more important things of being supervisor is having a vision and excuse me, and executing on that vision. Mm-hmm. There's the day-to-day issues in the running of the town and the nuts and bolts kind of thing that you have to take care of supervisor as well, which I think we've also made great strides in over the last year. But the more important thing is the visionary stuff, which I think has been, I've been very proud of it. I think the town board gets it as well. And I think it's, I think last night's vote was 5-0 right across the board twice. Right. They're starting to understand it. They're starting to see it themselves.
Oh yeah, no, you can see that. Yeah, no, it's nice. There's a lot of progress has been made. As our friend Joe Visconti of the Chamber of Commerce said when he came up to the podium, he sort of summarized it and pointed out that all of the things that have been accomplished, and how it's so much more. The town is so much more hospitable to businesses.
And there are towns around us that are retracting as well, which is remarkable. I mean, so there's a big opportunity for this.
I mean, you have, we know it, and it is very sad, and hopefully they come out of it. You have the situation in Peekskill with the Paramount Theater that they're trying to fix. So they have. The towns around here, like you say, have their challenges too.
I had two gentlemen come in the other day with a real estate broker, and they were looking for a particular project, and he, they've done all their homework. They're a national, institution. The guy has national awards for architecture and stuff like this for his particular project, and he was saying, we want to be in Yorktown.
Yeah, no, you do hear that too.
Unfortunately, I don't think I don't know there was any place that we tried to send him a few places that he could take a look at and see whether they work. But that's what you want. You finally get that, then you're going to see. And then you're going to make look. The tax burden here is just.
I know it's oppressive. It really is.
It is. And it's oppressive. It's depressing.
Yeah. Yes, right.
You can't we were able to get a tax decrease last year. Hopefully, we'll get another one this year coming up. But one of the biggest factors, and you got to get this across, is that your bonding companies look at your ability to raise money, so they look at your assessables. They look at they look at the ratio of commercial to residential. Right. Bonding companies don't want to invest in communities with heavy residential because they understand. Because it's a certain tolerance level that a residential tax base gets to, and then it can't sustain itself anymore. And we're there.
Yeah,
we are there.
Yes, right.
So you
mean we're at the fiscal cliff?
Yeah,
right?
There's no question. You can't sit. You can't do it. Interesting. Yesterday, Mike Capelwood says, that based upon the county's 0% increase, county Yorktown taxes are going down 2.1%. Blah blah blah. But other communities are going up, and then Bianco says, "Well, you see, I told you development's not good because if you get more greater assessables, you get a great." What he doesn't put into was it that Paul Harvey used to see. Now the rest of the story.
Yes, Paul Harvey. Yes, right.
The rest of the story is that what happens is that when you talk about that, it is the tax levy in a particular town may go up, but if it's because of increased assessments within that town boundary, what's happening is that the burden on the homeowner in that town has gone down because you gotta it's sort of like, hey, look, we walk into a bar and it's, three of us are drinking, and then the fourth guy walks in, and then we all share the tab. Well, you know what?
Just went down.
It just
right.
went down.
Right.
Tab, he may have bought the extra beer, and then, the total tab
but
went
still-
up, but my tab went down.
Right.
So it's you have to, because of the fact that you need ratables. You need ratables. You're never going to, if you cannot keep there's the ratio that the
Right.
town of
You're
Yorktown
pushing it
has.
pushing it on the homeowner. Yeah.
And it's very, very nice to think that, I mean, there's some owners that are out there that say, well, we don't need it because, well, maybe they're
Good for you.
yeah,
God bless you.
Yeah, maybe they're well
And
heeled.
God, I guess God did bless
Yeah,
you.
but there are, it's a very, very tough environment, and you have to really be innovative. You have to be creative. You have to be somewhat aggressive about it and visionary. And I think once you start doing that, things will start to come into place. And I think I thought it would take a lot longer to get there, but I think the statement's been made over and over again, and we are starting to see, the interest coming into town, which is great.
Oh yeah, no, you do, and you feel it when you talk to people in town too. It's sometimes, as you know, it could be the lack of complaints that tells you that things are going well.
Yeah. And then the other thing, everybody's garbage got picked up last week, or almost
right.
everybody's. Like we got a few, we had a handful of complaints.
There was one or two, which is a pretty darn good ratio. I would say.
But I was at County Executive O'Rourke's funeral today, and there was a lot of public officials up there, and everybody would ask me, well, how's your, I was like, the garbage. Everybody wants to know how our garbage is going.
We're known by the garbage we keep or that we put out. I don't know.
But I guess they're all curious how it's all turning out, and I said, well, it's so far. I mean, we had a few. There was a few glitches, a few things that didn't get picked up on the radar screen that probably should have been, whatever. But so far, so
good.
it's
to me, if it's uneventful, that's a good thing, right? Yeah. It's very uneventful. But I knew you had vision as soon as I met you because, for one thing, you don't wear glasses. Anyhow, you do. Your vision and executing it. I think everybody in town who's paying attention knows that things are going very well, which is that's a good feeling. The taxes are something else that have to come under control, and if Governor Cuomo, keeps his word about no new taxes statewide, that's encouraging too.
Yeah, no, they got it's more than on a state level. There are things that they can do.
Right.
Really, there are certain small strokes of the pen that can be huge savings.
Yeah.
Part of that's the prevailing wage in terms of municipal contracts. It costs us a fortune.
Right.
And it costs us a fortune because every public benefit corporation
mandated, right? It's it's prevailing wage.
It's actually it stems out of the New York State Constitution, but and historically there were very good reasons for it.
Right.
At this point, all it's doing is driving up the cost of everything and making people unemployed.
Yeah.
So there has to be some, but it's one of those things that have grown into this big sacred cow that can never be touched.
Yep.
And you need someone with real political courage to do it. In this state, I think you need a Democrat to do it because you need, it's like the Bill Clinton thing. He can do more. Being a Democrat, he can be more conservative than a Republican can be conservative because he just gets it's the polarization of the parties. But so I think he's done a very good job. I mean, he's got to look at fracking, which is I guess a dirty word for some people, but you really it's the way where we're going, where New York State is going is unsustainable. I have I got a bunch of kids, but my sister's got 7 kids as well. They're a little bit further along than mine are, and they're all coming out of college or just have come out of college. Right. And, they're leaving. It's not New York State that they're looking.
Oh no,
They can't. The demographics of population growth in the Northeast in New York is not is ominous.
Yes, I know it's changing.
So so you have and that's a shame, and so you really have to start just like we do it on a town level. You gotta change the culture. You gotta change the mentality.
Right, it's the root of it.
And I think if you could, you need to be strong, you need to be bold, you need to have a little political courage. You need a lot of political capital, which I think at this point Cuomo has. So
yes, oh yeah,
and that and to use it wisely, and maybe you can move things along. But you need to take the bold steps.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's the only way things are going to get done, especially in this day and age, too. All right, so I guess we can wrap it up. There's a lot here to think about. And thank you for watching Grace Notes with Yorktown Supervisor Michael Grace. I'm Bruce Apar of Chase Media Group. Be sure to catch us next time and every time, because Yorktown is your town. Thank you.